Hello, and welcome to A Sound Constitution here on CHLY 101.7 FM, a show where we focus on health topics important to our community. This year's team is made up of 8 fourth-year VIU nursing students. Our goal is to demystify health issues and address common misconceptions by sharing evidence-informed information from a variety of reliable resources. All information provided on our show will be available in our show notes on our Facebook and Instagram pages. We want to remind our listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution, Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution, or email us at asoundconstitution@gmail.com. We would like to start our show by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw people, with a broadcasting range that overlaps the Kwotson and Slaymun territories. This acknowledgement is done with gratitude to the Snuneymuxw people and with the intention to increase awareness about truth and reconciliation processes and efforts on Vancouver Island. Additional information and resources surrounding Snuneymuxw history, reconciliation, protocol, and land acknowledgement can be found on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'd like to welcome my co-hosts, Tyler, Cassidy, and Ashley. Today's episode is focusing on burnout, stress, and resilience. We're going to share a bit of information about what burnout is, how to handle burnout, and how to build resiliency. We share lots of local and online resources and have a few TED Talks that provide lots of great information. First off, let's start with what is burnout. The Queensland government provides a great definition of burnout. They state that burnout is a state of complete mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. Someone who's experiencing burnout may notice it becomes difficult to engage in activities that are normally meaningful to them. They may no longer care about things that are important or experience an increasing sense of hopelessness. Burnout can also have physical symptoms, such as headaches, stomach issues, fatigue, frequent illnesses, and changes in appetite. Burnout can lead to reduced performance in everyday tasks, withdrawal or isolation, procrastination, outbursts, and using substances to cope. Although burnout is most commonly work-related, it can be caused by other factors, such as a lack of close supportive relationships, too many responsibilities without enough help, and not enough sleep. There are multiple types of burnout. From an article written by Melody Wildling in the Harvard Business Review, the first type of burnout is overload burnout. This occurs when a person works harder to achieve success, often to the detriment of your own health and personal life. This is the most common type of burnout. The most commonly affected people are dedicated employees who feel obligated to work at an unsustainable level. As a result, they become both physically and mentally exhausted. The next type of burnout is under-challenged burnout. This type of burnout is considered the opposite of overload burnout. This occurs when you are bored and unstimulated, which leads to a lack of motivation. People experiencing under-challenged burnout may feel underappreciated and become frustrated with their lack of learning opportunities, room for growth, or meaningful connections. They tend to lose passion and become cynical and lethargic. They tend to cope with disassociation, thought suppressions, or distractions. The last type of burnout is neglect burnout. Neglect burnout occurs when you aren't given enough structure, direction, or guidance in the workplace. They may find it difficult to keep up with demands or otherwise feel unable to meet expectations. They begin to feel helpless and feel incapable of making any positive difference in their circumstances. Here are a few signs you may be on the road to burnout and how to deal with burnout. All of this information is provided by helpguide.org. You may be on the road to burnout if every day becomes a bad day. Caring about work or home life seems like a total waste of energy. You're exhausted all the time, and the majority of your day is spent on tasks you find either mind-numbingly dull or overwhelming. You may feel like nothing you do makes a difference or is appreciated. You may be thinking, what is the difference between burnout and just being stressed? Well, burnout may be the result of extreme and unrelenting amounts of stress. Stressed people can still imagine that if they can just get everything control, they'll feel better. People who are burnt out often don't see any hope of positive change in their situation. When you're stressed, your emotions are overreactive, You may produce urgency and hyperactivity, and you may become overengaged in order to resolve the overbearing workload. Someone who's burnt out has blunted emotions, is disengaged, and feels helpless and hopeless, as if they don't believe they will ever manage the overbearing workload. Now, how can you deal with burnout? One of the most important things you can do is to reach out to others. The person you talk to doesn't have to be able to fix your problem, but they must be someone who will listen to you attentively. Be more sociable with your coworkers. Having a good support system in your workplace is important. It'll help you to have people to buffer and maybe even help with some of the workload and allow you to take breaks. Limit your contact with negative people as they only drag you down. The next tip is to reframe the way you look at work. Maybe this means leaving your job and finding something you truly enjoy or find more fulfilling. If this isn't an option for you, work towards finding value in the work you are doing. Focus on how your work is helping others and the aspects of your job that you do enjoy. Work towards finding balance in your life. Look for satisfaction elsewhere, whether it's family, friends, hobbies, or volunteer work, and remember to take breaks and time off when you have the opportunity. The next tip is to reevaluate your priorities. Set boundaries by reminding yourself it's okay to say no. Don't overfill your calendar and only say yes to commitments that you want to make. Take breaks from your technology and try to nourish your creative side. Maybe this is a new hobby, music, or art, something that allows you not to think about work or whatever it is that may be stressing you out. Set aside time for relaxation within your day and be sure to get plenty of sleep. The next tip is to make exercise a priority. It may be the last thing you want to do when you feel burnt out, but exercise is a powerful antidote for stress and burnout. Aim to exercise for 30 minutes or more per day. And lastly, try to maintain a healthy diet. What you put in your body can have a huge impact on how you feel. Minimize your sugars, eat more omega-3 fatty acids, ditch the nicotine, and limit your alcohol intake for best results.
Thank you, Ashley. When you're in times of stress, people often say, "Oh, just do some breathing exercises." Well, okay. I didn't really get much out of that. I'm still feeling quite stressed. Well, I have an exercise that I have used personally to help increase my focus, as well as increase my stress threshold. This exercise is called cyclic sighing. This exercise takes roughly 5 minutes and is performed by the following steps. Take 2 deep breaths through the nose and conclude with an extended exhale through the mouth. First inhale through the nose is slow, and you're trying to fill your lungs as much as possible. Once you've inhaled as much as you can, follow it by performing a sharp inhale through the nose, then a slow, controlled exhale through the mouth. A research study conducted by Melis Balvin, Eric Neri, Manuela Kogan, Laura Weed, Vita Noriani, Uli Joe, Gary Hull, Jamie Zeitzer, David Spiegel, and Andrew Huberman, titled Brief, Structured Respiration Practices to Enhance Mood and Reduce Physiological Arousal. The study used multiple control groups. The first group breathing normally, the second group performing box breathing, the third performing cyclic sighing, and the fourth performing cyclical hyperventilation. They measured each participating member's heart rate and other physiological signs by using Whoop bracelets. Whoop bracelets are a smart bracelet that measure the wearer's heart rate, cardiovascular load, sleep, oxygenation, as well as the body's response to stress. And it's all pinged to your phone in real time. The findings were that the group that performed cyclic sighing had the most substantial positive outcome with a lowered heart rate and improved well-being. The researchers concluded that when performing cyclic sighing correctly, it forces your lungs to expand to the fullest, maximizing your oxygenation. Andrew Huberman runs a podcast titled Huberman Labs. He elaborates further on these breathing exercises in his episode, How to Breathe Correctly for Optimal Health, Mood, Learning, and Performance. We'll have links to this episode in our show notes. Now, back to you, Ashley.
If you're just tuning in now, this is the Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM. Now that we have learned about the basics of burnout, we are going to share a TED Talk that goes into a bit more detail about some of the topics we've discussed. Here's a TED Talk with Emily Nagoski, a sex educator that teaches women to live with joy and confidence within their bodies, and her sister Amelia, that is a conductor and author whose work focuses on the human body.
I'm Elise Hu. You're listening to TED Talks Daily. Today we have a vital conversation about burnout. In this conversation, from our new TED series, How to Deal with Difficult Feelings, TED's curator Chloe Shasha Brooks interviews authors and sisters Emily and Amelia Nagoski to better understand the factors that lead to burnout so we can cope with uncomfortable feelings in a healthier way. There is so much good stuff in here. In a year we were all pushed to our limits. I want to send this episode to all my friends, and you will too.
Let's dive right in. You co-authored a book called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And the inspiration for this book was actually based on a personal experience that you had with burnout, Amelia. Can you tell us more about that experience?
Well, it began with me going to school. While I was getting my doctorate of musical arts in conducting, I ended up in the hospital and I had abdominal pain, which they diagnosed as stress-induced, told me to go home and relax. And in fact, I had no idea what to do, but luckily I have a sister who has a Ph.D. in health behavior. So when I'm in the hospital, just in pain, laying there, not even really understanding how I got there or why, and I honestly didn't even believe that stress could cause physiological symptoms. And Emily said, how did you not know that? I'm a conductor and a singer. I have learned in my musical training to express my feelings with my body, to use my body as a vehicle for expressing emotion. And it occurred to me that if it was true that I didn't just have those feelings on stage, I had them all the time, my whole life. And if that was true, wow, that was a lot of feelings. So I didn't even want to believe this was true. But once Emily brought me a huge stack of peer-reviewed science, I couldn't deny anymore. Yes, stress manifests in the body and can turn into symptoms of illness.
So, okay, well, let's start with some definitions. What are the three components of burnout?
So according to the original technical definition from Herbert Freudenberger in the 1970s, burnout, which originally was inclusive only of the workplace but has expanded now, involves depersonalization, where you separate yourself emotionally from your work instead of investing yourself and feeling like it's meaningful. Decreased sense of accomplishment, where you just keep working harder and harder for less and less sense that what you are doing is making any difference. And emotional exhaustion. And while everyone experiences all three of these factors, over the 40 years since this original formulation, it turns out that broadly speaking, for men, burnout tends to manifest as depersonalization in particular. And for women, burnout tends to manifest as emotional exhaustion. So anyone can experience burnout, but your specific way of experiencing it is probably going to be different depending on who you are. And the factors that lead to burnout are not just professional ones. They are parenting and social activism and anything where you need to care and invest, where there are ongoing demands that are unmeetable expectations and unceasing demands. That is the formula, no matter what context it's in, for burnout.
Your work is around the stress cycle and how we can complete it. So will you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yes, this is my favorite part. So the main thing people need to begin with is that there is a difference between your stressors, the things that cause your stresses, which is what Amelia was talking about, the unmeetable goals and expectations, the family issues and money, those are your stressors. And then there's your stress, which is the physiological thing that happens in your body in response to any perceived threat. And it's largely the same no matter what the threat is. And evolutionarily, we know the threat response as being the fight, flight, freeze response intended to help us run away from a lion. So when you're being chased by a lion across the savannah of Africa, what do? You run.
right? So you use all this energy that happened in your body, all this adrenaline and cortisol. Every body system has been activated to help with this escape from the perceived threat. Your digestion and your immune system and your hormones, everything is focused on this one goal, including your cognition. Your problem solving is focused just on this one problem, and it will not let go because your life is at stake. But you manage to get back to your village, and the lion gives up, and you jump up and down and shout, and people come and listen to you tell the story, and you hug each other, and the sun seems to shine brighter. And that is the complete stress response cycle. It has a beginning when you perceive the threat, a middle where you do something with your body, and an end where your body receives the signal that it has escaped from this potential threat and your body is now a safe place for you to be. Alas, we live in a world where the behaviors that deal with our stressors are no longer the behaviors that deal with the stress in our bodies. We are almost never chased by lions. Instead, our stressors are the capital T, capital F future, or our children, or a commute is like the classic example. The stressor, when people have commutes, it's one of the most stressful parts of their lives. And your body activates the same adrenaline and cortisol and digestion and immune system. And you finally get home, right? You have dealt with your stressor. Do you suddenly jump up and down and feel grateful to be alive and the sun seems to shine brighter? No, because you've dealt with the stressor, but that does not mean that you've dealt with the stress itself. This is excellent news because it means that you don't have to wait for your stressor to be gone before you can begin to feel better, because you can deal with the stress while the stressor still exists. Good thing, because most of our stressors are what are called chronic stressors that are there day after day, week after week, year after year. And I hope people are like, okay, so how do I complete the stress response cycle? And we have a list of like a dozen concrete, specific, evidence-based ways to help people deal with the stress response cycle, but just taking the example of a commute. You get out of your car or you get off the bus and your shoulders are trying to be your earrings and you're grumpy and cranky and still thinking about the jerk who did I don't know what. And what you do is jumping jacks in your driveway. Or you go for a long walk around the block, or you just tense every muscle in your body, standing outside your apartment door, holding your breath, tense, tense, tense for a slow count of 10. Even just that little bit of using your body is what communicates to your body that your body is now a safe place for you to be. You have to separate dealing with the stress from dealing with the thing that caused the stress.
And this need to deal with the stress in a separate process from dealing with the things that cause your stress is why the doctors telling me to relax was not going to be an effective means of recovering from burnout. I had to deal with the stress in my body. And if, let's say you get out of your car and instead of doing jumping jacks, you just say, okay, I'm going to relax now. Relax now. You relax. Not effective, right? You've relaxed, but you haven't changed your body's physiological state into one of safety.
Totally. On a first question from the audience. Okay, from Facebook, someone asks, how do you know whether what you're experiencing is burnout or something else?
Yeah, ask a medical professional for sure. And there's a lot of overlap between burnout and lots of other experiences, including depression and anxiety and grief and rage and repressed rage. We've all got it. So our layperson's definition of burnout is, as you said, that feeling of being overwhelmed and exhausted by everything you have to do while still worrying that you're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. If you feel like you are struggling even to get out of bed and get the basics done, that goes beyond burnout. Burnout is where you can show up for work, but you spend your whole day fantasizing about being at a different job.
It's important to know that burnout is not a medical diagnosis. It's not a mental illness. It's a condition related to overwhelming stress. So it's not like it puts you in this different state where you're going to be, trapped and you have to have 13 years of therapy and whatever. It just means that you need to be completing your stress response cycles.
Work burnout is just such an important thing to talk about, I think, for so many. And I'm curious if we can focus on that for a moment. Like, what are some of the earliest warning signs of professional burnout?
Let's say there's two kinds of people. There's Emily people who are aware of what's going on in their bodies at all times. And if they have signs of burnout, they notice it just right away because that's how they do. And then there's people like me who never know what their body is experiencing. I didn't notice I was burning out until I was literally in the emergency room. But one of the things that causes burnout is our inability to recognize the hard stuff welling up inside us. And the solution is to be able to turn toward the difficult feelings with kindness and compassion and say, oh, I feel stressed. I feel unreasonably angry right now. I'm so cranky. I wonder why that is. And instead of just trying to tell yourself to relax, ask that feeling, why are you there? What do you need from me? What has to change?
Yeah. One of the primary barriers to listening to your body is a fear of the uncomfortable feelings that are happening in your body. One of the things I say over and over, we say it over and over in Burnout, is that feelings are tunnels. You have to go through the darkness to get to the light at the end, right? Feelings are tunnels. Stress is a tunnel. You got to all the way through it. Not that the stress is bad for you. It's getting stuck in the middle that is bad for you, never having an opportunity to take your body through the cycle. One of the reasons why people don't do that is because they feel afraid of their uncomfortable internal experiences. When I first started learning this stuff explicitly, we grew up in a family where uncomfortable feelings were not allowed. And the idea that feelings were tunnels, I was just like, I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure that uncomfortable feelings are caves with bats and rats and snakes and a river of poison. And if I begin to experience my uncomfortable feelings, I will be trapped forever in the dark with the rats and the bats. I began a practice of noticing when my body was experiencing a sensation, allowing it to be, and allowing it to move all the way through. And as I practiced that with gentle emotions, I began to be able to practice it with more and more intense emotions, both positive and negative intense emotions. So that now when I'm confronted with big, difficult stuff, I trust that my body will go all the way through the feelings without me being trapped in the dark with predators.
I started doing it 20 years after Emily did, but it's never too late. You can always recover.
How can you talk to your manager or supervisor about the fact that you're experiencing burnout and get real support?
If you're in a workplace where you don't feel like you can say to your boss, my mammalian body is having mammalian needs and I need to adjust my work situation to accommodate the fact that I live in a monkey suit, know that we consult all the time with gigantic corporations that are making active efforts to incorporate acknowledging people's emotional and physical needs, checking in at every meeting, saying, where are you at? Asking people to become aware of and more clear in expressing how they feel, and promoting the idea that managers should be ready to cope when their supervisee comes in and has a bunch of feelings that they need to process and move through. So it exists. People are working on it. I feel optimistic. And I also know that there's a lot of workplaces that are trapped in this sort of industrial, super patriarchal, rabidly individualistic mindset where you just need to protect yourself against the toxic culture by creating a bubble of love at home where everyone in your household cares for your well-being as much as you care for theirs.
How can people who feel truly stuck take a first step towards wellness? And how do you define wellness too?
We define wellness as the freedom to oscillate through all the cycles of being human, from effort to rest, from autonomy to connection. And we always say that the cure for burnout is not self-care, cannot be self-care. How can you be expected to self-care your way out of burnout? You can't. What you need is a bubble of love around you, people who care about your well-being as much as you care about theirs, who will turn toward you and say, you need a break. I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to step in that way, or even just give you 15 minutes for you to yell about whatever the problems you feel at that moment and just be on your side and go, yeah, I can't believe that happened to you. I'm so on your side for 15 minutes. Just that can give you enough of a release to feel a little bit better, to take one more step. The cure for burnout is not self-care. It is all of us caring for each other. We can't do it alone. We need each other.
Making that happen in real life is, of course, easier said than done. And one of the things that is my little reminder to myself is that when I feel like I need more grit, what I actually need is more help. And when I look at Amelia's life, and I think she needs more discipline, she needs more perseverance, she needs to work harder. What she actually needs is more kindness. That's the baseline culture change that's going to end burnout forever.
And usually the next question people ask us is, I don't have anyone like that in my life. I am the leader. I am the one who's doing all of the things. And the solution for that is probably closer than you think. I mean, I grew up in a household where feelings were like not allowed, and we were not close our whole lives. And then we started reading the research that said that connection and sharing support was the way out of burnout. And we started trying, and we broke down this 30-year barrier of, societal and family pressure not to feel our feelings around each other. And it turns out that if you feel like you're isolated, there's probably someone on the other side of that wall, it turns out, who wants just as much as you to connect with someone else. And we've been isolated because we've been told that it's stronger to be independent. That's not true. We're gonna be healthier and stronger when we work together. There's probably someone already waiting who also wants the kind of relationship that you are desiring.
I think that's just so nice to hear too in the pandemic when we're all feeling so isolated. But we have one final question we'd like to bring up. Okay, what can you do about burnout if you are a teacher where every day is filled with stressors?
I taught school for 5 years. That's how long I made it. I burned out after 4 years, and then I pushed through one more year. If you have any possible means of reducing the everyday stressors by getting involved in administrative decisions, that's great, but that's almost never the case. The thing number one is to complete the stress response cycle. You can exercise if that works for you. A good night's sleep will do it. How do I get a good night's sleep when I have to get up at 5 a.m.? You have to go to bed earlier, and that means that your whole family has to give you permission to go to bed earlier. They have to cherish your sleep the way you cherish theirs. You can use your imagination and imagine yourself pummeling all of the stressors into the ground, and you recover from that because your imagination doesn't know the difference between pummeling the stressors in your imagination versus pummeling them in real life. And you surround yourself with a bubble of love, other teachers who can support you and tell you, yes, you deserve care. You are a valuable, educated, wonderful human being. You are not just, Darth Vader dealing with these kids. You are a valuable person who deserves resources, who deserves care, who deserves love, who deserves freedom to oscillate.
Thank you both so much for joining us together and for teaching us about burnout and the stress cycle. This has been really illuminated. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
PRX.
If you're just tuning in, this is the Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7, and that was a TED Talk from Emily and Amelia Nagowski about burnout. Now Ashley's going to come on. She's going to tell us a bit about resilience and stress.
With stress comes resiliency. According to the Center of Addictions and Mental Health, resilience is about bouncing back from difficult life experiences or challenges. Building resilience is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, and while we go throughout the process, we experience emotional pain and distress and work on using strategies that can help us cope and adapt as best as we can to the difficult event. Here are some strategies provided by the American Psychological Association. Building resilience is individualized, such as that a strategy that might work for you might not work for another, so you can select the ones that might work best for you. Building good and healthy relationships with family, friends, and community. It is about creating a healthy social support network, seeking social support as well as helping others. Not seeing crises as unbearable. We can work on interpreting the events in such a way that could be helpful to us, make us feel less distressed or hopeless or helpless, such that putting it into perspective, looking at any learning from the events, identifying any positives, and focusing on what is within one's control and taking one step at a time. I feel like this next one is really important. So, accepting circumstances that cannot be changed. We can subsequently focus more on situations we have more control over and can change, which can help us feel less powerless and more self-confident and hopeful. It's really helpful to have the mindset to focus on what you can control with the time you have. Next, we have developing realistic goals. We can move towards our goals by taking gradual steps and appreciate each step taken. Throughout our nursing program, we learned about SMART goals. S standing for specific, M standing for measurable, A for attainable, R for relevance, and T for time. Using this acronym to make goals ensures goals are realistic and attainable. Another important step to resilience is taking decisive actions. Focus on taking an active approach and problem solving when possible, as avoidance rarely makes problems go away. Look for opportunities for self-discovery. Following difficult events, it helps to also identify any learning about yourself, our positives, our strengths, or any healthy relationship we have developed. Developing confidence in self. Recognizing one's own strength and resourcefulness help increase our self-confidence and ability to problem solve. Personally, I try to think of 3 things I like about myself when I start my day. Another tool is keeping a long-term perspective. Looking at the stressful event in a broader context helps to better evaluate the situation and subsequently help us make healthier decisions. Maintaining a hopeful outlook. Focusing on visualizing what one wants helps, again, move towards problem solving and take an active approach. And so important to engage in self-care. Taking care of self by paying attention to our needs and feelings and exercising and relaxing. If you're experiencing high stress environments, ensure to provide yourself with self-care. Whatever suits you, even with a busy lifestyle, just even taking 10 to 30 minutes to yourself a day can really make a difference. We all have our own unique ways to build resilience. So what strategies have helped you build resilience in your life? Before I end this discussion, I would like to name some resources for mental health here in Nanaimo. First, we have the VHA Access Center. They provide crisis counseling and support for acute emotional distress, referrals to withdrawal management, connects to appropriate mental health and substance use programs, hospital and/or community treatment and recovery services. The VHA Access Center is open Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 6:15 p.m. For drop-in crisis counseling, it is Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:15 p.m. with no appointment necessary. It is located at number 203-2000 Island Highway North, Nanaimo, BC. Their phone number there is 250-739-5710. Virtual services are available for British Columbians who are experiencing anxiety, depression, or other mental health challenges. Some resources provided from the government website include 310 Mental Health Support. Call 310-6789 for emotional support, information, and resources specific to mental health. If you or anyone else you know are experiencing feelings of distress or despair, including thoughts of suicide, please don't hesitate and call 1-800-SUICIDE. Another resource listed is the KUU-US Crisis Response Service. The number is 1-800-588-8717 for culturally aware crisis support for Indigenous peoples in BC.
When you're struggling with burnout, it's important to be able to access resources when you need them. In addition to the community resources listed by Ashley, we'd like to provide a few virtual resources available online. Wellness Together Canada is a virtual resource that offers mental health support for people in Canada. Their virtual resources are available 24/7 and also free of charge. Popular topics include wellness chats, self-assessments, and evidence-informed tools. Crisis Centre BC is another great online resource that offers free modules on resilience and wellness. Each 50 to 60-minute module is designed to provide standalone training so that you can join the modules that resonate with you. These modules explore themes related to emotional well-being, including building a foundation of what mindfulness is, exploring related science, and introducing practices to observe thoughts and emotions, manage reactivity, the negative bias, and harness the science of happiness. These can be accessed at www.crisiscentre.bc.ca under Programs and Services. The Foundry Virtual BC app is a great resource for young people aged 12 to 24 and their caregivers. On their app, you can drop in or schedule a virtual counseling appointment, access groups and workshops, browse their library of tools and resources, or explore other peer supports in the community. Program hours run Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends. Drop-in hours are 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. To book an appointment or drop in, download the Foundry Virtual BC app on your mobile device. Links to all of these resources will be provided in our show notes and posted to our ASC YouTube channel and social media pages.
So up next, we have a TED Talk by Sharon Horsch Bergquist, who is an educator, and she gives us a look at what goes on inside our body when we are chronically stressed.
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases, such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury. But chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? you may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code. And they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
If you're just tuning in now, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM.
And now, here's Tyler with another breathing exercise for us.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, ASC community. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I want you to just stop for a moment. Just stop what you're doing and plant both your feet flat on the ground. Put your hands on your knees, palms facing up. We're just going to do some breathing. I want you to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 8, and release for 4. All right, breathe in for 4. Hold for 8. Now breathe out for 4. Let's do that one more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 8. And breathe out for 4. Well, thank you for joining me on this little breathing exercise. I hope you're feeling calm and collected for the rest of the episode.
And now, for our last segment of the day, we'll go back to Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley. So up next, we have a TED Talk by Kelly McGonigal. She translates academic research into practical strategies for health, happiness, and personal success. She urges us to see stress as a positive and introduces us to an unsung mechanism for stress reduction, reaching out to others.
This episode features psychologist Kelly McGonigal. This talk contains powerful visuals. Download the video at TED.com. Here's Kelly McGonigal.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this. I am a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress. And today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay, some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, that would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're going to all do this together. It's going to be fun. For me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're going to do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're going to have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding. You might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk, and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you, and your stress response becomes healthier. Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand this side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people you care about. Some people have even suggested we should snort oxytocin to become more compassionate and caring. But here's what most people don't understand about oxytocin. It's a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. And when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you. Okay, so how is knowing this side of stress going to make you healthier? Well, oxytocin doesn't only act on your brain, it also acts on your body. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, either to seek support or to help someone else, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, But that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you.
So before I end here, I would like to say that any information provided in this episode does not replace the health advice given from your healthcare practitioner. I hope this information has been helpful and changes your perspective on stress. Thank you all for listening, and now back to you, Ashley.
Well, that's the end of today's episode. I'd like to remind our audience that all of the information provided in today's episode does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution or Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution. I'd like to thank my co-hosts, Ashley, Tyler, and Cassidy, for all of their time and research for today's episode. I'd also like to thank our listeners for tuning in to A Sound Constitution. For details and show notes from today's episode, or to follow along on what's coming up this season, check out our Facebook or Instagram page. If you've missed parts of this episode or would like to listen to this episode or our past episodes, check out our YouTube at A Sound Constitution. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.